The Force is old and full of shadows.
The Mustafar landing platform. Ash-gray sky above a river of lava. The stink of scorched metal and something older beneath it. The particular sulfur of a planet that has been dying for 1,000 years and hasn't finished yet. Vader stands at the platform's edge. The suit is still new enough that the filtration system sometimes processes the volcanic particulate in ways that generate phantom sensations. Pressure without source, warmth without origin. And he has learned, in the weeks since the surgery, to catalog these as system noise and move past them. The fortress is his now. The Emperor made it a gift, or the Emperor made it a cage, and the difference between those two things has not yet resolved into something he is prepared to examine directly. The Separatist Council is dead, has been dead for 3 weeks. He can still locate the memory, the wet heat of their fear, the efficiency of it, the way the Master's instructions had a particular quality of completion about them, like the final note of a piece practiced for years. Not regret, not satisfaction. Data, the war ended that night, and what followed was the Empire, and what followed the Empire was this: recycled air and volcanic light and a calm officer inside the shuttle clearing his throat. Lord Vader. He doesn't turn. We've picked up an anomalous crash signature, approximately 40 kilometers northeast, in the Ashfall Basin. The registry matches a Republic-late gunship. The name arrives before the officer speaks it. Something in the Force, a thread going taut, then slack. Designation? Vader asks. At 773, sir. Last logged assignment. A pause. The rustle of a data file. Captain Rex's unit. Attached to Commander Tano's task force. Tano. The word lands in his chest before his mind catches it. Not a thought. A pressure. Something behind the sternum that the suit's sensors register as a spike in cardiac rhythm before he consciously understands what he's feeling. He turns from the lava, plot a course to the crash site. Sir, the Fortress survey team's report is not yet. Plot, the course. Silence on the other end. The kind of silence that knows better than to become argument. The Ashfall Basin. Northeast of the platform by 42 kilometers. The sky here is lower, bruised, heavy with particulate from a vent field that has been releasing sulfur gas since before the Clone Wars began. The lake lies split across 2 lava-cooled ridgelines, its hull peeled back like fruit rind, one engine pod still smoldering. The crash happened weeks ago, during the chaos of the final days of the Republic. The fires have long since gone cold. Vader descends the shuttle's ramp. His boots find the ferrocrete gray rock and crack it slightly under the suit's weight. Around the wreck, arranged in a row along the flattest stretch of ground, are 6 mounds of gathered stone. Grave markers. Assembled by hand, quickly, by someone who needed to do something with the grief rather than sit with it. She is kneeling at the last mound. Her back is to him. Her montrals catch the wind coming in from the east, low and acrid, and tilt with it the way they always did when she was tracking sound past the range of human hearing. Her leku are still. She hasn't moved since the shuttle entered sensor range. She already knows he's there. He stops. 20 meters between them. He doesn't speak. Ahsoka Tano rises from her knees, slowly, not because she's afraid, because she's choosing the pace, taking one final second to be something other than what is about to happen next. Her hands are at her sides, her fingers are open. Then she turns. He watches her face register it. The shock comes first. The human part of her, the part that still expects the Force to confirm what her eyes are seeing, that keeps searching behind the black armor for the signature she's known since she was 14 years old. She finds the suit's dark presence instead. Vast, wrong, folded in on itself like a star after collapse. Her sabers are in her hands before the thought finishes. Twin blades, blue, both of them, the pair reforged for her, ignite simultaneously. The sound of them is the only clean thing in the basin. Anakin? One word. She says it like a question she already knows the answer to. Vader says nothing. The silence fills the space between them. It fills the empty graves. It fills the distance between who he was 3 weeks ago and whatever is standing in this basin now, breathing through a machine, watching her hold her ground with her hands shaking. He takes a step forward. Ahsoka drops into a Taru stance, wide, balanced, built for rapid movement and unpredictable offense. Her jaw is set, her eyes are wet, and she is not going to let that mean anything right now. "What did they do to you?" she asks. "What did they do?" He takes another step. She attacks. It is not a duel. That word implies two participants with comparable odds. What happens in the Ashfall Basin is closer to watching someone throw themselves against a wall. Repeated, furious, diminishing. She is extraordinary. He knows this. Knew it when she was a child half his height, with more raw instinct than any Padawan the temple had produced in a generation. Her Ataru footwork is flawless even on broken rock. Her reverse grip form flowing between offense and evasion with the efficiency of someone who has survived a war. None of it matters. He catches her first overhead strike with his open hand. No saber, no effort, and the kinetic force of his grip stops her dead. She wrenches free, rolls left, drives her short blade at his knee joint. He sidesteps. She spins, both blades in a crossing arc toward his helmet. He steps into the strike. Both of her wrists hit his forearms at the same moment. The impact jars her to her elbows. Her sabers angle wide, scorching stone. She tries to drive a knee into his abdominal plating and finds durasteel. He does not hit her back. That is the detail that should register, but doesn't. Not yet, not to her. He deflects, redirects, absorbs. When she overextends on a thrust, he moves her arm aside instead of breaking it. When she reaches into the force and pushes against his chest, he neutralizes the pressure without countering it. He is not trying to defeat her. He is waiting for her to exhaust herself. And she is too furious to notice. She comes at him a final time. Something desperate in it now, not tactical, not trained, just the last available expression of a grief that has nowhere else to go. Both blades in a committed plunge towards center mass. He catches her wrists, both of them, holds them. Her sabers go dark when the trembling in her arms becomes too much to sustain. She stares up at him. Her breathing is ragged. Tears have cut lines through the ash on her face, and she is furious about that too. Furious at her own body for offering something so legible. "Kill me," she says. "If you're actually gone, just kill me. Don't stand there." He says nothing. Her legs give. He catches her before her knees find the rock, one arm across her back, a single controlled motion, her weight against his chest plate. She is unconscious before he finishes lowering himself to one knee. The force exhaustion takes her like a curtain dropping, fast, total, complete. He holds her in the silence of the basin. One coherent thought surfaces through everything the last 3 weeks have been. Through the council chamber, through Padme's voice cracking on his name, through the lava and the surgery and the suit, and the mechanical removal of everything Anakin Skywalker ever wanted. Not this one, too. He carries her up the ramp himself. Doesn't assign it to a trooper. Doesn't explain why. The shuttle lifts from the Ashfall Basin as Mustafar's eastern vent field exhales another column of particulate into the already gray sky. 42 kilometers southwest, the fortress's sensor array runs its standard sweep. Indifferent. Unchanged. Obi-Wan Kenobi is alive, somewhere beyond this system's edge. He knows this the way he knows everything from that night, as fact, stripped of the texture it once would have carried. He doesn't look toward the platform. He looks at the crash site growing small below the viewport, at the 6 stone graves arranged in a careful row by someone who needed the act of it, at the basin already filling with ash, already erasing the evidence of what happened here. He files a sensor report with the duty officer before the shuttle clears the atmosphere. Anomalous reading confirmed. He says, "Volcanic interference. No survivors. Log it and close the file." "Yes, my lord." The channel closes. Mustafar's glow fills the viewport behind him, orange and endless, the color of something that has been burning so long it no longer remembers what it was before. He turns away from it. Ahsoka Tano lies unconscious on the shuttle's medical bench. Her lekku have gone still. Her montrals, even in sleep, angle faintly toward sound. He watches her breathe. The course is already plotted. There is only one place in the galaxy where he controls every sensor array, every patrol route, every filed report that might ask an inconvenient question. The shuttle banks east, toward the fortress. Toward home, if that word still means anything. Recycled air, sterile white light from a panel recessed too high to reach. The vault's walls are basalt, natural, unfinished, the kind of stone that absorbs sound and gives nothing back. 40 meters below the fortress's lowest inspected level, the dead kyber embedded in the rock does what dead things do. It takes, and gives back only silence. There are no windows, no chronometer, no way to mark the difference between a day and a week, except the rhythm of ration trays slid through the base of the door and the slow, cellular certainty that time is passing whether she tracks it or not. Ahsoka Tano has been awake for what feels like 3 days. She sits cross-legged in the vault's center, spine straight, eyes open, watching the door. Not meditating. She tried that in the first week, or what she thinks was the first week, and found the Force here muffled and strange, like trying to hear a voice through water. The dead kyber in the walls doesn't hurt her connection so much as it blurs it. Everything beyond the vault feels gauze-wrapped. Distant, she can still feel herself. That's something. The ration tray from this morning, or this evening, or whatever it is, sits untouched against the far wall. The one before it, too. She is not going to make this easy. She hears him before the door opens. Not with the Force. The kyber baffle makes that unreliable. But with her mantrals, which have always been better instruments than anyone who didn't have them ever understood. The particular frequency of the suit's respirator carries through 40 meters of basalt like a subsonic drumbeat. A sound with weight. A sound that belongs to a body that used to make entirely different sounds. Easy laughter, frustrated sighs, the specific rhythm of Anakin Skywalker asleep on a gunship, with his head tipped back and his mouth slightly open. This sound is none of those things. The door opens. The suit fills the frame. She doesn't stand, she doesn't move. She keeps her eyes on the middle distance and lets him come to her, because that is the one choice still available to her, and she is going to make it deliberately, every single time. He steps inside. The vault shrinks. It's not a metaphor. The suit's physical mass, the mechanical breathing, the low electromagnetic signature of the life support systems all crowd the available space in a way that is purely material and somehow still feels like pressure against her sternum. He stops 4 meters away, looks at the untouched ration trays. "You haven't eaten," he says. The vocoder flattens the observation into something between statement and verdict. "Noticed that, did you?" Ahsoka says. Silence. The respirator. In, out, in, out. "You will eat," he says. "Will I?" She turns her gaze to him now, slow, deliberate, meeting the black lenses without flinching. "Or what? You'll force-feed me? Add that to the list?" "The list," he repeats. "Kidnapping, false imprisonment, killing the people I fought with." She keeps her voice level. Not calm, level. There's a difference, and she's working very hard to maintain it. Wearing his face, using his hands. She pauses. "Murderer." The word lands in the space between them, and stays there. The suit doesn't move. The respirator doesn't change tempo. She watches for any flicker of response in the body language, a shift of weight, a tightening of the hands, and finds nothing readable, which is its own kind of answer. "Eat," he says again. "Call me by my name," she says. "You haven't yet, not once since you put me in here." Another silence. Longer. "Ahsoka," he says. The vocoder mangles the shape of it slightly, flattens the first syllable, makes the second land harder than it should, but it's there. She files the fact that he said it without being told he couldn't say it. Files the fact that he said it at all. She is going to catalog everything in this vault, because information is the only currency she has, and she intends to spend none of it carelessly. "Thank you," she says, with precise withering courtesy. "Now get out." He doesn't leave. This is the detail she hadn't fully calculated. She expected him to take the dismissal, expected some residual Anakin-shaped response to being told off that would send him back through the door with something to prove. Instead, he remains exactly where he is, 4 meters away, filling the room with mechanical breathing, saying nothing. Minutes pass. She picks up the ration tray. She tells herself, it's not capitulation, it's resource management. She can't plan anything, can't scratch tallies, can't map the sound patterns of guard rotations, can't do any of the work that staying alive in a place like this requires, if her body starts shutting down for lack of calories. Surviving is not the same as surrendering. She holds on to that distinction the way she used to hold her sabers, grip firm enough to matter, loose enough to move. She eats. He watches. "Where are we?" she asks, not because she expects a real answer, but because asking is its own form of resistance, a refusal to accept that questions have stopped being available to her. "Mustafar," he says. "I know it's Mustafar. I can smell it through the air recyclers." She sets down the empty tray. "I mean, we're on Mustafar. How deep? How many guards? What the patrol rotation looks like. She meets his lenses again. You know I'm going to find out anyway. Yes, he says. Then why not just tell me? Because you would leave, he says. And you would die. The simplicity of it is almost more disturbing than cruelty would be. He isn't performing menace. He isn't posturing. He states it the way he used to state tactical assessments in the field. Just the situation as he reads it, stripped of ornamentation. She wants to tell him she'd take the odds. She doesn't, because that would be the beginning of a negotiation, and she is not ready to negotiate with whatever is standing in this vault. She is still at war. She intends to stay at war. Get out, she says again. This time he goes. She waits until the door seals, and the sound of the respirator fades down the corridor. 32 steps, then a second door, then silence. She counts the steps. She will count them every time until she has the number memorized. 32. She moves to the wall opposite the door and sits with her back against the basalt. The stone is cold through her clothing, a real physical sensation, the kind that can't be blurred by kyber interference, and she presses into it deliberately. Cold, real, her. She begins to scratch a tally mark into the mortar between two stone blocks with the edge of the ration tray's corner. One line, thin as she can make it, barely visible. Day 1, or close enough. Then she closes her eyes and meditates. The force here is gauze-wrapped and strange, but it's there. She can feel the lava outside the fortress walls, distant, furious, alive in its own way. She can feel the faint thread of the living world above. Insects that survive in the upper tunnels, microbes in the volcanic vents, the ancient slow patience of stone under pressure. Small things, but real. She focuses on those. Not on the graves in the asphalt basin. Not on Rex, wherever he is. Not on Anakin's voice coming out of that machine. She puts all of it on a shelf in the back of her mind. Carefully, deliberately, the way you set down something you're not strong enough to carry yet. And she breathes, and she reaches for the small living things, and she holds on. This is not acceptance. This is preparation. She doesn't hear him leave the second door. She realizes this 40 minutes later when she opens her eyes and lets her montrals sweep the corridor's sound. The respirator's frequency is still there, muffled, further than 4 meters, further than the second door, but present, stationary. He is standing in the corridor outside the vault, not pacing, not moving, just standing. She doesn't know how long he's been there. She doesn't know what it means that he stayed. She turns it over the way she turns over tactical problems, looking for the angle, the logic, the thing it tells her about the terrain. What it tells her is this: whatever brought him to the asphalt basin, whatever made him file a false sensor report and plot a course to this sub-basement and embed dead kyber in basalt walls, it is not nothing. People who feel nothing do not stand outside a door in the dark. She files that too. She presses her back against the cold stone, pulls her knees to her chest, and stares at the thin tally mark scratched into the mortar. Day 1. He still hasn't moved. Ozone and blaster scorch in the outer corridors. Somewhere above her, a ventilation shaft releases recycled air in a slow, rhythmic pulse. Every 40 seconds, reliable as a heartbeat. She has been counting that pulse for 6 months. Ahsoka moves through the maintenance duct on her elbows and knees, weight distributed, no sound beyond the soft compression of her knees against the metal. The duct is 40 centimeters wide. She discovered, 2 months ago, that the third sub-level maintenance grid connects to the second via a junction box the labor droids service from the outside only, which means no interior sensor array, no tripwire. Just open metal and the 40-second breath of the ventilation cycle. She has the guard rotation memorized to the minute. She has the door seal override sequence, lifted from an unwitting maintenance droid's access panel during one of its routine passes, scratched into the inside of her left wrist in a cipher only she knows. She has a vibroblade, maintenance grade, the kind used for cutting conduit, barely 20 centimeters long, not a weapon by any real standard. She has 38 seconds before the next ventilation pulse. She moves. The second sublevel is wider than the maintenance grid and infinitely more dangerous. Real lighting, real sensor arrays, though she has mapped their sweep patterns and knows the 2-second blind spot that occurs when array C7 completes its rotation and array C8 hasn't begun. 2 seconds. She uses both of them. The stairwell to sublevel 1 is unguarded. This struck her as sloppy the first time she scouted it, and then she understood. Nobody on Vader's staff has been told this sublevel exists. There is no guard because there is no post. There is no post because the fortress's official schematics don't show anything below the first sublevel's maintenance grid. She climbs the stairwell. 3 flights. Her legs have more muscle than she expected after 6 months of confinement. She has been doing what she can in the vault's limited floor space, more out of refusal than hope. First sublevel. The air changes here. Warmer. The lava heat from the exterior walls penetrates at this depth, and with it comes something she hasn't felt in 6 months. Moving air. Unrecycled. Her montrals catch it before her lungs do. The specific frequency of air that has touched the outside world recently, that carries particulate and sulfur, and the distant sound of the planet's ongoing immolation. It is not clean air. It is barely breathable air. It is the most extraordinary thing she has ever smelled. She keeps moving. The transit hangar is on the fortress's eastern face. She has never been this far. The last 3 attempts ended in sub-level 2, once because a guard rotation ran early, once because the ventilation pulse shifted, once because she heard the suit's respirator somewhere above her and pressed herself into a maintenance alcove for 2 hours until it moved on. This time she reaches the hangar door. She cracks it. 1 centimeter. Peers through. 4 shuttles. 2 TIE escorts on the elevated rack. 3 ground crew, all droids, moving between the ships in the slow, purposeful pattern of routine maintenance. At the far end of the hangar, past the shuttles, past the droid charging stations, past 40 meters of open floor, a door, and beyond the door, visible through the hangar's single exterior viewport. Sky. Ash red and low and bruised with volcanic particulate, and entirely real and completely open. She has 17 minutes before the next guard rotation reaches this corridor. She has a maintenance vibroblade, and no lightsaber, and the Force is still gauze-wrapped from 6 months of dead Kyber. But it is less muffled here, further from the vault's walls, and she can feel the edges of it returning like blood flow to a numbed limb. Slow, tingling, almost painful. She pushes through the door. The droids don't look up. Maintenance droids rarely do. They are programmed for their task radius, and nothing outside it registers as input. She moves along the hangar's western wall, in the shadow of the nearest shuttle's landing struts, keeping low. The exit door is 30 meters away. 25. 20. She is 15 meters from the door when the Inquisitor steps out from behind the furthest shuttle. He is not one she recognizes. Young, by Imperial standards, the implants along his jaw still look recent. The red tattoos on his cheekbones, the particular bright crimson of fresh ink rather than the faded work of a veteran. His double-bladed lightsaber is already in his hand but not ignited. He is looking at her with the careful, curious expression of someone who has just found exactly what they were hoping to find and is deciding how much to enjoy it. Well, he says, this is unexpected. Ahsoka doesn't run the math out loud. She runs it internally, in the time it takes her to straighten from her crouch and shift her weight to the balls of her feet. He has a lightsaber. She has a vibroblade. He is connected to the Force, and she is still pulling hers back from 6 months of static. He is blocking the only exit. She attacks anyway. The vibroblade is not a saber. It doesn't parry, doesn't redirect, doesn't work in the geometry she has spent her whole life training for. She uses it the way a desperate person uses a knife. Close, fast, targeting the gap between his armor plates at the shoulder joint. She gets within 2 meters before his saber ignites. Red. Obviously red. He bats the vibroblade aside with contemptuous ease, and the impact jars her wrist to the elbow. Her grip holds. She rolls under his follow-through strike, comes up inside his reach, drives her elbow toward his throat. He gets an arm up. She hits the arm. He hits her with the Force. Not a push, a slap, horizontal and sharp. And she goes into the side of the nearest shuttle hard enough to taste copper. The vibroblade skitters across the floor. She gets to her feet. Her ribs report damage. She ignores the report. He advances. Not rushing, he has registered that she is unarmed now, and he is taking his time with it, which is its own kind of information. He wants this to last. He ignites the second blade. Tano, he says, like he's confirming a reservation. The Emperor will be very pleased. She backs toward the wall. Her left hand finds the hull of the shuttle behind her. Her right finds nothing. He raises the saber. The floor buckles. Not metaphorically, the durasteel beneath the Inquisitor's feet physically deforms. A single sharp concussion from below, like something vast shifting its weight. The overhead lighting swings. A rack of equipment on the far wall collapses sideways. The maintenance droids freeze in unison, their task protocols suddenly without useful input. Red light fills the hangar before the figure is visible. Vader comes through the interior door at the corridor end. Not the entrance Ahsoka used, the main one, the one that opens from the command level, and the hangar does what spaces always do when he enters them. It reorganizes. Everything in the room becomes relative to him. The shuttles are just large objects. The Inquisitor is a small one. The Inquisitor, to his credit, doesn't run. He squares his stance. He raises his saber. Vader crosses the hangar in 4 strides. He doesn't speak. He doesn't ignite his own blade. He reaches out with one hand and the Inquisitor's double saber tears free of his grip and hits the ceiling 20 meters up. The Inquisitor reaches into the Force for a push, and Vader walks through it like it's weather. He takes the Inquisitor by the throat. The sound the Inquisitor makes is brief. Vader sets him down with a kind of terrible precision, not dropping, placing, and turns. Ahsoka is standing with her back against the shuttle hull, her arms at her sides, her eyes on the body. The copper taste in her mouth has spread. One of her ribs has decided to file a formal complaint, and she is continuing to ignore it. Vader looks at her for a long moment. "You cannot survive without me," he says. Not shouted, not growled. Quiet and flat and diagnostic, the way a medic says the bone is broken. Not to cause pain, not to comfort, just because it is the accurate description of the situation, and accuracy is the only thing on offer. She wants to tell him he's wrong. She wants to mean it. She looks at the dead Inquisitor. She looks at the exit door. 30 meters and 1 biometric seal she doesn't have the code for. She looks at the single viewport and the ash-red sky beyond it, the sky she has been counting guard rotations for 6 months to reach. She looks back at Vader, her ribs, the copper, the vibroblade somewhere behind her. Useless. The Force still coming back slowly, tingling, not enough. She doesn't say anything. He turns and walks toward the interior door, and the expectation in his movement, not a command, simply a certainty, is that she will follow. That the math has been done and the conclusion is shared. She stays where she is for 10 more seconds. Then, she follows. At the hangar's edge, where the smooth durasteel floor gives way to the doorframe's threshold, she stops. The dead Inquisitor's lightsaber has landed 3 meters to her left. She looks at it. The hilt is standard Inquisitorious issue. Angular, double-ring design. The kyber inside it bled red and long since corrupted. She doesn't pick it up. She notes exactly where it is. She marks the distance from the door, the angle from the shuttle's landing strut, the precise position of the hilt relative to the floor seam. Then she crosses the threshold and lets the door close behind her. The low chamber where she meditates. Acrid smell of stressed crystal. Not burning exactly. Closer to the particular sharpness of something under pressure that has not yet decided which way to break. The vault's dead kyber hums just below hearing, its usual blurred static, but beneath it now a second frequency. Alive, angry, deeply structurally wrong. The Inquisitor's lightsaber hilt sits on the floor in front of her, disassembled. She took it apart 3 weeks after the hangar. Slowly, in the dark, by feel, the way she used to disassemble her own sabers blindfolded as a training exercise. The components are arranged around her in a careful circle. Emitter, focusing lens, energy gate, power cell. And at the center, cradled in both palms, the kyber crystal. It is the color of a wound, deep arterial red, shot through with black fissures where the bleeding process fractured its internal lattice. She can feel it even through the vault's kyber baffle, not clearly the way she could feel a healthy crystal, but as a pressure, a bad dream with teeth. Something that knows it was changed against its nature and has been screaming about it ever since in a frequency only Force sensitives can hear. She closes her fingers around it and begins. Weeks pass. She doesn't track them precisely. She has her tally marks for days. But the meditation work doesn't run on a daily schedule. It runs on endurance. She sits until she can't, sleeps, eats without being asked to anymore, sits again. The process is nothing like what she was taught. In the temple, crystal attunement was a gift. The crystal called to you, you answered. The relationship formed quickly and almost painlessly for a Padawan with a clear connection. Purification, as Master Yoda described it once in a lecture she half slept through at 13, was a matter of patience and compassion. You held the crystal in the Force's light until the darkness moved on. This crystal doesn't want to move on. It has been bled. The bleeding didn't just corrupt its resonance. It rewrote the crystal's relationship to the Force at a structural level, taught it that darkness is the only available frequency. Asking it to open to the light now is like asking someone to trust again, after being taught that trust is the mechanism of pain. She knows something about that. She doesn't tell the crystal what it should feel. She doesn't push light into it. She just holds it, in her hands and in the Force simultaneously, and lets it be what it is, and stays anyway. Day after day, week after week, she is not trying to fix it. She is trying to be present with it long enough that it remembers presence doesn't have to mean harm. It resists. Viciously, at the beginning, it pushes back with cold and nausea, and twice with something she can only describe as a vision, though vision is too generous a word. A flash of the moment it was bled. The specific terror of having your fundamental nature inverted, and she has to sit with that too, has to let it move through her, without becoming it. The third time the vision comes, she stays inside it longer. She lets herself feel it fully. The crystal's memory of violation, the before and the after, the unbridgeable distance between them. She doesn't look away. After that, the resistance softens slightly. Only slightly. Vader is aware of what she's doing. She knows this because he has stopped commenting on her silence, which is itself a form of comment. He comes to the vault every 2 or 3 days. She has calibrated his pattern well enough now to recognize it, and sits across from her while she meditates, and says nothing, and leaves. The first time he did this, she opened her eyes and told him to get out, and he did. The second time she opened her eyes and told him to get out, and he waited 20 minutes first. The third time she didn't open her eyes. She decided, this is acceptable, not welcome, acceptable. He is not interfering. Whatever calculus has produced his restraint, the output is that she has space to work, and she is going to use it. What she has not decided is what it means that he allows this at all. She knows what a bled crystal is. She knows he knows she knows. He was there for every lesson she ever had about kyber resonance, every practical session in the temple's lower crystal labs, every theoretical discussion about what the Sith practice of bleeding actually does to a stone at the molecular level. He understands exactly what she is attempting, and he is standing outside the door and letting her attempt it. She puts this in the catalog and doesn't draw a conclusion from it yet. 8 months in, the crystal stops fighting her. It doesn't surrender. That's not the right word for it, and she refuses the word even in her own mind. It simply opens, like a hand that has been clenched for years, finally running out of the strength to stay closed. She feels it happen in the middle of an otherwise unremarkable meditation session. A shift in the frequency, a loosening in the lattice, and then something that is almost silence, not the dead kyber silence of the vault walls, but a real silence, the kind that follows the end of a long noise. She keeps breathing, she keeps holding it, she doesn't react. She is afraid that if she reacts, she'll break something. For 3 more weeks, she tends the silence carefully, breathes into it, maintains the contact without pressing. She thinks of the temple's instruction on this. Do not grasp, do not grip, receive. And she thinks of Anakin, who could never fully master that instruction, who always gripped, and she thinks of him for exactly as long as she can stand it before she puts him back on the shelf. Then, on a morning she has marked as day 261, the crystal turns. It is not an explosion of light. She wants to be precise about this, in her own memory, because she has a feeling this moment will matter later, and she doesn't want to misremember it. The change is thermal first. The crystal in her palm goes from the ambient cool of the vault to warm. Body temperature, then slightly above it, as if something inside it has switched on after a very long time offline. Then, the color shifts. She watches it happen through closed fingers, her palms backlit from within. The deep arterial red bleeds outward from the center, lightening at the edges first, the black fissures filling with something pale. The red becomes orange. The orange becomes gold. The gold cools to white. Not the flat white of sterile lighting, the white of something with depth. Layered, warm at the center, with the faintest blue at the very edges where the focusing structure meets the outer lattice. The sound it makes when she ignites it is different. Every saber has a sound. She knows this the way musicians know intervals, the specific timbre of her old blue blades, the flat aggressive buzz of a Sith weapon. This blade, as it ignites for the first time, produces a sound she has never heard before, steadier than a Jedi blade, quieter than a Sith blade. Not the sound of a weapon, the sound of something that has decided what it is after a very long argument. White, pure white, lighting the vault's black stone in a way the overhead panels never managed. She sits with it for a long time before she speaks. Vader is in the doorway. She doesn't know when he arrived. The blade's ignition masked his respirator's frequency, and she was not, for once, tracking. He is still. The red lenses take in the white light without comment. She rises. She faces him. "I have conditions," she says. He waits. "I will not fall." She says it the way she said his name on the crash site, as a statement of existing fact, not a promise about the future. "Whatever you think you're doing with me here, whatever use you've decided I am, I will not become what they made you. That isn't available." The respirator, in, out. "Second," she says, "I will not call you Anakin. You don't get that from me." Still nothing. "Third," she holds the white blade steady, its light falling across the space between them. "If I help you move against Palpatine, and I am not saying I will, I am saying if, you redirect the Inquisitors. Every lead that trends toward a surviving Jedi, you bury it. You file it as a dead end. You send them somewhere else." A long silence. The blade hums its new, quiet note. "You have been doing that already," Vader says finally. The admission lands. She absorbs it without showing what it costs her to absorb it. "Then keep doing it," she says, formally, as an agreement. He reaches inside his cloak. A data card, black, unmarked Imperial Logistics encryption. He holds it out across the space between them. She looks at it. She looks at him. She takes it. The vault, lit white, holds them both for a moment that is not reconciliation, and is not alliance, and is not forgiveness. It is two people who have run out of the option of not needing each other, standing in the only light available, making the only deal the situation permits. She doesn't deactivate the blade. She wants him to see it. She wants him to understand in the precise, tactical way he understands everything, exactly what he is looking at, not a weapon she is offering him. A thing she made herself, out of something his people broke, by staying present with it long enough that it remembered what it was. He can draw his own conclusions about the metaphor. He leaves. She remains. The white blade is the only light in the room, and for the first time in 261 days, that is enough. The recycled cold of a deep space boarding corridor. Vacuum suit hiss at the collar seal. The particular silence after a kill in 0G, not quiet exactly, more the absence of the specific sounds that were present before, the gap where breathing used to be. Ahsoka floats in the corridor's junction and waits for the silence to finish telling her what she needs to know. 3 compartments swept. 2 guards down. Quick, clean, no discharge signatures that would register on the ship's internal sensors as anything other than a pressure fluctuation. The 3rd compartment is the one that matters. She can feel the dark side acolyte behind the door the way you feel a hot coal through a glove. Not burning, not yet, but the heat is specific and directional and entirely unmistakable. She checks the chrono on her wrist. 11 minutes since she breached the hull. The window is 15. She goes through the door. The acolyte is young. This is the detail she registers first, and the detail she spends the least time on. Young doesn't mean harmless. The Inquisitorius recruits young specifically because young Force sensitives who have survived long enough to be recruited have already been through something that burned away anything soft. This one has a single red blade, no double ring, still in training configuration. His eyes find her in the corridor's emergency lighting and go immediately to her hands. White blades. Both of them. His expression does something complicated. "You're dead," he says. "Tano died at Order 66. It's in the records. The records are wrong," Ahsoka says, and closes the distance before he finishes processing the sentence. She is not what she was in the Ashfall Basin. 2 years of sparring with the only opponent on Mustafar who matters has done things to her body that she is still cataloging. Her gem-so footwork is instinct now, weight forward, grounded, built for power exchange rather than evasion. But she is not Vader. She has kept what he cannot teach her, the speed, the angular thinking, the reverse grip geometry that creates attack lines a standard grip fighter's muscle memory doesn't automatically defend. She uses all of it. The acolyte is good. He blocks her first combination, redirects her right blade with a competent Suresu parry, steps inside her follow-through to try a pommel strike at her jaw. She lets him get closer than he expects and headbutts him. Practical, graceless, effective. And when he staggers, she drives her elbow into his solar plexus and takes his saber hand at the wrist with her short blade. Clean. Fast. Deliberate. He goes down. She catches him before he hits the wall, lowers him with the same controlled motion Vader uses, and doesn't examine why she has absorbed that particular habit. 8 minutes since breach. She needs to be back at the hull, cut in 4. She moves. The debrief, such as it is, happens in Vader's command room on the fortress's upper level, a room she has been permitted access to for 14 months now, long enough that she no longer notes the transition from vault to upper level as a sensory event. It is simply where she goes when she comes back. The Imperial officer on duty, a lieutenant whose name she has learned is Cavell, mid-40s, the kind of Imperial careerist who has survived this long by developing an exceptional sensitivity to which questions will end his career, presents the incident report without looking at her. "Rebel ambush, my lord," Cavell says, reading from his datapad with the careful neutrality of a man who has learned that the content of reports is less important than the confidence with which they are delivered. The inspection team's shuttle was boarded approximately 6 hours after departing Lothal. No survivors. Sensor data from the nearest relay buoy shows a drive signature consistent with a modified CR-90 Corvette, Rebel configuration. Vader stands at the viewport with his back to the room. Below the fortress, the lava moves in its slow, indifferent channels. "And the acolyte?" he asks. "Lost in the boarding action, my lord." His tracking beacon went dark at approximately the same time as the shuttle's emergency transponder. "A significant loss," Vader says. "Yes, my lord. Dismissed." Cavell leaves with the expression of a man who has successfully diffused something and is not going to think about what it was. The door seals. Vader turns from the viewport. Ahsoka is sitting on the edge of the room's secondary console, still in the close-fitting mission suit, the white hilts at her hips. She is eating from a ration pack with the focused efficiency of someone refueling rather than enjoying. "The acolyte was alive when I left him," she says, without looking up. "I know. Someone else finished it." "The shuttle's emergency purge activated on a timer," Vader says. "Standard Imperial protocol for boarding events. The crew would have initiated it before they were taken." She looks up. "You knew about the purge timer?" A pause. "The respirator." "Yes." She holds his gaze for 3 seconds. Then she goes back to the ration pack. "Next time," she says, "tell me about the timers." The operational pattern, by this point, has its own rhythm. Vader feeds her the manifests, ship schedules, travel routes, the specific itineraries of Moffs and inspection teams and dark side acolytes that Palpatine has positioned in proximity to Vader's territory, close enough to be surveillance, framed carefully enough to be deniable as such. Vader identifies the ones that need to disappear. Ahsoka makes them disappear in ways that leave rebel fingerprints. She has become, without either of them using the word, his instrument. She knows this. She has catalogued it with the same precision she catalogues everything in this fortress, and she has decided that knowing it clearly is the only available alternative to being used without knowing it. The pact is real. He has buried 11 Inquisitor leads in 14 months. Each one filed as a dead end, each one representing a surviving Jedi or Force-sensitive who will wake up tomorrow without a red blade hunting them. She has checked his work where she can. He has not cheated on that part. So she does the missions. She keeps the terms of her side. And she watches him the way she has watched him since the vault, building a picture one detail at a time, because a picture is the only weapon that might eventually matter. The near miss happens on the 4th mission, a Moff's personal shuttle, 2 hours out of Geonosis. She has swept the passenger manifest and confirmed the target, a senior logistics officer carrying audit records that would, if they reached Coruscant, redirect Imperial resource allocation in ways that would compromise 3 of the supply lines Vader has quietly diverted for his own purposes. The operation is clean until the 3rd compartment, when she finds a survivor she didn't account for. A civilian aide, young, non-Force sensitive, who has wedged herself behind a storage locker and is holding a short-range comm with hands that are not entirely steady. Ahsoka stops in the doorway. The aide looks at her. The white blades are active. There is nothing in the compartment that functions as cover. 4 seconds pass. Ahsoka deactivates the blades. "Don't," she says. "Quiet. Not a threat, a request. I'm not going to hurt you. I need you to put the comm down and stay in this compartment until the ship reaches its next beacon relay. Someone will find you." The aide stares at her. "You're rebel." "Yes," Ahsoka says, because it is the available fiction and because, she thinks, it is not entirely untrue in the ways that matter. You killed everyone else. A beat. Not everyone. She closes the compartment door and seals it from the outside. Not a lock, just enough resistance to delay, and moves back toward the hull breach at a pace that is controlled and does not become a run. Because running changes the sound signature, and she needs the silence to last. 3 more minutes. She makes the hull cut with 40 seconds to spare. She comes back to the fortress in the hour before the lower level's lighting shifts to its dim night cycle. Not to the vault, she notes again, as she always does now. The specific language of it. She comes back to the fortress. She enters from the eastern approach. She walks the corridor that she has walked enough times that her body knows the exact placement of the uneven floor seam at the 4th door. The one she has never reported, because it gives her a half-second's worth of sound advantage over anyone walking behind her. Vader is in the corridor outside the room she has been given. Not the vault, an actual room, since month 14. Standing still in the way he sometimes stands still, which is different from waiting. Waiting has direction. This is simply presence. On the room's threshold there is a meal, not a ration pack, actual food. Something hot, something that required preparation, set on a tray with the kind of practical precision that doesn't acknowledge itself as care. She stops, looks at the tray, looks at him. He says nothing. He turns and walks back toward the command level, the respirator's rhythm unchanged, his back already to her before she has finished processing what she is looking at. She picks up the tray. She goes inside. She eats the hot food while it is still hot. She does not decide what it means. She decides to eat it first and figure out what it means later, and later, as it turns out, she is asleep before she gets there. The deep training vault. Sweat and ozone. Saber light strobing off obsidian black stone in white and red alternation, the 2 colors never quite overlapping, as if the room itself is tracking the distance between them. Ahsoka moves first. She always moves first in these sessions, not because he is slower, he is categorically not slower, but because waiting for Vader to initiate is a lesson she learned in the 2nd month of sparring, and has not needed to relearn. When he initiates, he comes at a level that bypasses the warm-up entirely and goes straight to the place where her body stops thinking and starts surviving. Better to set the pace herself. Better to choose the geometry. She comes in low, right blade leading, left blade angled back for the follow cross. A gem-so entry, weight forward, designed to test his guard before she commits to a line. He blocks the right blade with his own, redirects rather than deflects, and the force of his parry travels up her arm to the shoulder and asks a serious question about her joints. She steps into it, absorbs, lets the momentum carry her past him and pivots. A year ago she would have rolled clear and reset. Her body doesn't do that anymore. They work for 40 minutes without speaking. This is normal. The first 20 minutes of any session are diagnostic. She is mapping where he is today, the specific calibration of his speed and pressure and force engagement, because it shifts, not dramatically, not in ways that would be visible to anyone who hadn't sparred him hundreds of times, but it shifts. On the days when something external has gone wrong, an imperial complication, a report from Coruscant that requires navigation, his strikes carry a weight that is slightly less controlled, a fraction more punishing. On the days when nothing has happened, he is precise and cold and almost academic, which is in some ways harder to fight. Today he is somewhere between, present, engaged. She drives a crossing combination at his chest, right blade high, left blade cutting underneath, and he splits the defense. Catching the high blade and letting the low one score a line across his chest plate, that would be a killing strike on an unarmored opponent. He doesn't acknowledge it. He reverses his grip for a half second, a tell she has learned to read, and she is already moving when his elbow comes for her head. She ducks it, barely. Your left shoulder, she says, circling, drops when you go for the elbow strike. It's been doing that for 6 months. I know, he says. You know and you keep doing it. I am aware of the irony. She almost smiles. She redirects it into a feint. The session finds its rhythm. Not comfortable exactly, combat between them is never comfortable, but familiar in the way that long-practiced things become familiar. The call and response of two people who have spent enough time trying to hit each other that the patterns have become a kind of shared language. She goads him in the 45th minute. She does this deliberately, with the specific precision of someone who has identified a lever and is choosing to press it. "Tell me about the pod race," she says, mid-combination. His next strike is a fraction slower. "Boon to Eve," she continues, maintaining her offense. "You were 9. You built the pod yourself. Watto didn't think you'd finish it." She catches his counter and pushes into it. "Qui-Gon bet your freedom on it." "Stop," he says. "You won. Sebelba's pod came apart on the last turn." She drives her right blade toward his shoulder, and he deflects it harder than the situation requires. "Anakin told me that story 3 times. Said it differently each time. More dangerous each retelling, which meant the true version was probably the first one." He stops moving. Not a tactical pause. A full stop. The red blade drops to a low guard and his breathing, always audible, changes its rhythm. 2 shorter inhalations, a longer one, the suit's systems compensating for something the body underneath is doing. She holds her position, white blade steady. "You told it first," she says. Quieter now because she has found the place she was looking for, and she does not need volume to work in it. "When I was 14 and we were stuck in a holding pattern over Felucia for 6 hours waiting for General Kenobi, you were bored. You taught me sabacc instead of the story, actually, but then you told it anyway because the sabacc was going badly." She pauses. "You cheated at sabacc. I knew you were cheating. I didn't say anything because you were my master, and I was trying to make a good impression." The training vault is very quiet. "Did you?" he asks. The vocoder is doing something odd, flattening the question in a way that might be effect suppression, or might be the suit's standard emotional leveling function, and she has never been able to tell the difference. "Did I what?" "Make a good impression," she considers this. "Probably not. I knocked your sabacc hand onto the floor when you tried to claim the pot, and accused you of stacking the deck. A beat. You laughed for about 30 seconds, and then told me I'd do. The suit is still. The respirator. In, out. I remember," he says. She lets the silence stay for a moment. Not long enough to become weight, just long enough to be real. Then she raises her blades again, because this is still a training session, and what she has done is a probe, not an extraction, and she is not going to let sentiment finish the work she started tactically. He raises his blade to meet her, but the precision is gone. Not badly. He is still better than anything she would face outside this vault, still operating at a level that requires her full attention, but the cold academic quality of the first hour has cracked. His strikes have warmth in them now. Not rage. Something else, something that has been looking for a gap in the machinery, and found one. She uses it, presses him back across the vault in a combination she has been building toward for 20 minutes, angles that only work when his center of gravity is slightly forward, which it is now because he is leaning into the fight instead of controlling it. She drives his back toward the wall, both blades in a pattern that gives him 3 bad options and no good ones. He chooses the least bad, takes the score across his left forearm rather than the center mass. She steps back, drops to a low guard, breathing hard. He looks at his forearm, at the scorched line in the suit's black armor. "You've been setting that up since the warm-up," he says. "Since the 45th minute," she says, "when I started talking." A long pause. She can see him processing it. Not the combat geometry, he has already processed that, but the layered structure of what she did, the way the conversation and the saber work were the same move. "Obi-Wan taught you that," he says. "You taught me that," she says. "You just forgot you knew it." They sit against the vault wall afterward. Not together. There are 4 meters between them, which is the standard distance which neither of them has ever suggested changing. He has not deactivated his blade. She has not deactivated hers. The 2 lights, red and white, lay their separate colors on the stone floor and don't quite meet in the middle. The breathing is the loudest thing in the room. "I miss." He starts. He stops. She waits. "I miss being known," he says finally. The vocoder makes the sentence strange, flattens it, removes the specific texture of what it costs him, but the sentence itself is accurate, and they both know it. Not the rank, not the capability. He pauses. There was a person who knew the sabacc story was true before the 3rd retelling, who knew which version to believe. She doesn't fill the silence with comfort. She has thought about this, the question of whether comfort is something she is willing to offer him. And she has decided that the answer is no, not because she is cruel, but because comfort is the wrong medicine for what he is describing, and she knows the difference. Yes, she says instead, just the word, an acknowledgement rather than a response. He turns his head toward her. The red lenses, the mask. Is that still available, he asks. She looks at the place where the red light and the white light meet on the stone floor, the thin line between them, where the colors push against each other without mixing. I don't know, she says. Ask me again in another 10 years. It is not a no. They both understand that it is not a no. She means for it to be understood, clearly and without ambiguity, that it is not a no. She doesn't move closer. She doesn't leave either. That restraint is the most honest thing she has to offer him, and she offers it without softening it, and he accepts it in silence. And they sit with their separate lights on the obsidian floor until the vault's cycle shifts and the room goes dark around both of them. Tatooine dust and dry heat, remembered rather than felt. The contrast arrives in Ahsoka's body before he speaks a word. The volcanic humidity of Mustafar pressing against her skin while his presence carries something else into the room entirely. An atmospheric residue. The specific dryness of a desert planet that doesn't leave a person quickly, that clings to the suit's filtration systems and the memory simultaneously. She is at the secondary console when he returns, reviewing manifests. The next two operations, a supply chain disruption near Lothal and a personnel transfer she has been watching for 3 weeks. She hears the eastern approach door at the corridor's end, hears the particular weight of his footfall, and knows before she looks up that something has changed. Not the pace, not the respirator's rhythm. Something underneath those things. A frequency shift, the way a room's acoustics change when a large object is moved within it. She looks up. He stops in the doorway. She has learned, over years of cataloging, to read the suit's stillness as carefully as another person's face. There is the stillness of controlled anger, which sits in the shoulders. There is the stillness of tactical calculation, which is perfectly balanced, weight-centered. There is the stillness of the training vault when she lands a point, which is brief and carries a quality she has privately categorized as grudging. This stillness is none of those. You went near Tatooine, she says. He enters the room, moves to the viewport. The lava below does what it always does, moves in its slow, indifferent channels, unchanged by whatever is happening above it. An errand, he says, unrelated. And the respirator. 3 full cycles before he answers. I have been monitoring certain census registries, he says, quietly, for some time. A pause that carries the specific weight of something that has been carried alone and is now being set down. Padme was pregnant when she died. I knew this. I have known it since the surgery. The Emperor told me she died before, that the child did not survive. Ahsoka says nothing. She is very still. I did not entirely believe him, Vader says. I have not entirely believed him about many things, for many years. But belief and investigation are different activities, and the investigation required patience I was not certain I could sustain without. Consequence. He turns from the viewport. The Force signature I found over Tatooine is not merely strong. It is specific. It carries a quality I recognize as my own, the way you recognize a voice in a crowd before you identify the face. He pauses. And the registry shows a moisture farmer on the Jundland Wastes periphery. Owen Lars. She knows that name. She places it in 4 seconds. The wedding, Naboo, a face she saw once in a mission file from the early Clone Wars. Anakin's stepbrother. Padme standing in white. A day that ended on Geonosis with half the Jedi Order in an arena. He has a nephew, Vader says, recently taken in. A boy. The console in front of her stops being something she is looking at and becomes something she is gripping. His name, Vader says, is Luke. The grief and the joy arrive at the same moment and occupy the same space and refuse to sort themselves into sequence. She knew, in the abstract, that Padme had been pregnant. She had seen the shape of it near the end, the careful way Padme moved through Senate chambers with her robes adjusted precisely to conceal what the Force made obvious to anyone paying attention. She knew what Order 66 meant for everyone. She had done the math and arrived at the only available conclusion, and put it on the shelf with everything else, and not looked at it directly. She is looking at it now. He's alive, she says, not a question. Yes. How old? 19. 19 years on a desert planet, hidden in plain sight, carrying a name that is half a provocation, and apparently nobody in the Imperial apparatus has looked at Tatooine's moisture farming census with enough attention to notice. She wants to laugh. She wants to put her head down on the console. She does neither. She presses both palms flat against the surface and breathes and lets the feeling move through her without becoming it. Then she thinks of something else. Padme was carrying twins, she says, quietly. Not a question either. The suit is still. The Alderaan registry, he says, after a moment. Senator Bail Organa, an adopted daughter, approximately the same age. Another pause. I found that record first. It was more carefully buried than the Tatooine one. Someone with considerable resources arranged it. He turns back to the viewport. She is safe. Her cover is more complete than the boys. A senator's household. Her name is Leia. Ahsoka closes her eyes for 3 seconds. 2 children, both alive, both hidden, both carrying Padme's face somewhere in them, and Anakin's hands, and 19 years of a galaxy that has no idea what it is holding. She opens her eyes. Padme, she says. She did not survive, he says. The vocoder makes it flat. The flatness is not absence of feeling. She knows that now, knows the difference between the suit suppressing something and the suit failing to render something. This is suppression. Active, heavy, practiced. I know she didn't survive, Ahsoka says. Quiet. I'm saying her name, there's a difference. He is silent. Padme Amidala, she says, clearly into the room. She deserves to have her name said by someone who loved her. The suit doesn't move. The respirator continues its mechanical rhythm. But something in the stillness changes quality, the way light changes when a cloud passes over it, briefly, then gone. Yes, he says. She does. She gives it 10 minutes, lets the information settle into the room, and become real before she asks the next question, because she already knows the shape of the next question, and she needs to be certain before she asks it. What are you going to do with him? She says. Vader turns from the viewport. He is strong in the Force, he says. Exceptionally. Even at distance, the signature is. He stops, chooses different words. He has potential that should not be wasted. That's not what I asked. He could be brought to our side. The hour is deliberate. She hears the weight he places on it, the invitation embedded in the pronoun. With the right approach, with time, he would understand what I am, once he... No, she says. He stops. That's not what you think it is, she says. Whatever you're calling it, protection, potential, bringing him to your side, listen to the words you're using. Our side. He will understand. You're describing something you've already decided, and you're dressing it in language that sounds like care. He is my son, Vader says. The sentence arrives without the vocoder's usual flatness, raw-edged, something underneath the machinery that the machinery cannot entirely contain. I know he is, she says. That's why I'm telling you this. She stands, moves away from the console, because what she needs to say requires her to not be sitting. You brought me here, she says. You put me in a vault 40 meters underground, and you told yourself it was because the galaxy would kill me. And maybe that was true. Maybe you even believed it. She stops, 2 meters from him. But you made me need you. You structured it so that the safest place in the galaxy was the one you controlled, and then you called it protection. The room holds the sentence. I survived it, she says. I'm standing here. I made my own terms, and I held them, and I'm still myself, which is, that took everything I had, every day, for years. She looks at the lenses. He's 19 years old, and he doesn't know you exist, and that is the kindest thing that is currently true about his life. He will be found, Vader says. Palpatine is, then warn him, she says. Find a way to warn him without touching him, without bringing him here, without making him need you. She holds his gaze. Can you do that? Can you protect someone without owning them? The question lands. She watches it land. He doesn't answer. The silence goes on long enough that the silence becomes the answer, and they both understand it. She wakes in the early hours, the fortress's night cycle, the corridor lighting reduced to its dim amber minimum, and lies still on her bunk and stares at the ceiling and does the thing she has been deferring since the console. She thinks about Luke Skywalker on Tatooine, 19 years old, moisture farmer, unaware, living in the specific kind of ignorance that is actually a form of safety, the way a sealed room protects the thing inside it from the weather and also from everything else. She thinks about Leia Organa on Alderaan, growing up in a senator's house, surrounded by people who chose to love her. Safe in a different way, visible but covered by the kind of protection that money and political standing, and a father who would die before he betrayed her, can provide. She thinks about what Vader said, "He will understand what I am," and the cold, clarifying certainty that arrives alongside it. He is going to move toward the boy, not now, not this year, possibly not for years, but the pull is there. She felt it in the room the way she felt the Acolyte's dark side signature through a sealed door. Specific, directional, unmistakable. He has found the one thing in the galaxy that he wants more than he wants whatever arrangement exists between them on this fortress, and he is already beginning, in his particular way, to build the architecture around it, which means she is running out of time. She has told herself for years that the goal is Vader, that if she stays, if she maintains the terms of the pact, if she keeps pressing on the Anakin-shaped place beneath the machinery, something will eventually shift enough to matter. She has believed this. She has done the work of believing it every day, which is different from it being easy. But there is a boy on Tatooine who is 19 years old and strong in the Force and entirely unaware that his father knows his name, and a girl on Alderaan who is the same age and carries the same inheritance and has even less protection than she thinks, because the cover that keeps her safe depends on nobody ever looking too hard. She is not going to let what happened to her happen to either of them. She sits up in the dark. Her white hilts are on the shelf beside the bunk, where they always are. She picks up the right one, turns it in her hands. The familiar weight of it, the specific balance she has held for years now, the crystal inside it still carrying that quality of hard-won stillness. She sets it down. She begins, in her mind, to map the fortress's eastern sensor net, not the way she has mapped it before, passively, cataloging, storing against a future that remained hypothetical. She maps it now with the specific attention of someone who has chosen a date. Not tonight, not soon, but chosen, for the first time in years. She is not planning to survive Mustafar. She is planning to leave it. The vault's stale air, undisturbed. Dust already settling in the corners where she used to sit. The tally marks on the wall, 261 days before the white blade, then stopped, because after that she was counting forward rather than backward, and forward didn't need marking. She is not here to see any of this. She is already gone. The Eastern Sensor Net has a gap she identified 14 months ago and has not used and has not reported. It occurs at the junction of arrays E4 and E6, where the coverage radius of each was calculated independently, and the overlap zone was mapped assuming a target of average human height. Ahsoka is not average human height. The gap, for someone her size moving at floor level through the service corridor that runs beneath the eastern generator housing, is 4.3 seconds wide. She uses 2 of them. The generator housing is warm. The volcanic heat that penetrates this level of the fortress, regardless of the insulation Vader's engineering crews installed during the expansion in Year 4, she moves through it in the maintenance suit she has been assembling piece by piece. For 11 months, component by component, each piece requisitioned under a different supply code, none of them individually suspicious. She looks, from any sensor array that might be watching, like a droid on a standard routing inspection. She has been watching how the droids move for years. The secondary hangar is not the Eastern Transit hangar from her first escape attempt. She has not used that route again, has not given it the attention that might make it legible as a preference. The secondary hangar is smaller, lower traffic, used primarily for resupply shuttles that arrive on a schedule she has had memorized for 8 months. The shuttle she needs arrives at 0340. It departs at 0412. She reaches the hangar at 0337. 3 minutes. She spends them in the shadow of the fuel line housing, breathing steadily, running the plan's remaining variables, one final time. The sensor blind she used to enter the hangar will close in 40 minutes, regardless of whether she is in it. The duty officer rotation in the command level changes at 0400, creating a 12-minute window where the outgoing officer is completing his report and the incoming officer is not yet fully engaged with the live feeds. The shuttle's pilot droid will accept her boarding code, a code she lifted from a legitimate resupply manifest 9 months ago and has been holding without flagging a passenger discrepancy. Because the shuttle's passenger manifest is filed as a blanket crew authorization, and individual boarding confirmations are not cross-checked against the biometric registry until the shuttle reaches its next port of call. By then, she will not be on the shuttle. She will be on the freighter that the shuttle connects to at the Lothal relay station, under a name she has been building for 6 months, with documentation that traces back to a real shipping registry and a real company that does not know it has a new employee. It is not a perfect plan. She has run it enough times to know exactly where it is imperfect. But she has also run it enough times to know that perfect is not available, that every plan she has ever executed has had a gap somewhere, and that the determining factor is never the plan. It is whether the person executing it can stay present when the gap appears. She can stay present. Years in this fortress have made her very good at staying present. The shuttle arrives at 0339. 2 minutes early, she adjusts and moves. Vader finds the vault at 060. He knows before he reaches the door. Not through the Force, the dead Kyber in the walls still does what it was designed to do, and Ahsoka's absence is not a Force presence he can track the way he could track a living signature. He knows because the Eastern Sensor Net flagged an anomaly in its 0500 diagnostic, and he knows because the resupply shuttle's departure was logged at 0408 rather than 0412, and he knows because he has been aware, somewhere beneath the tactical surface of every day for the past 4 months, that she was planning this. He knew. He didn't act on it. He opens the vault door. The recycled air moves past him into the corridor. Stale, unchanged, carrying the particular quality of a space that has not had a living person in it for hours. The overhead panel casts its sterile light on bare stone. The tally marks on the wall, the circle on the floor where she used to sit, the stone worn slightly smoother there than elsewhere from years of contact. The ration shelf. Empty but clean. She cleared it before she left. He stands in the doorway for a long time. The suit's systems register a spike in something. The life support monitors track, without naming. Cardiac. Respiratory. The mechanical correction is automatic, a function he long since stopped noticing, and the readouts return to baseline within seconds. And the baseline tells him nothing that the baseline has not always told him. He walks to the center of the vault. On the floor, where the worn circle is, there is one object. Small. She left it deliberately. He knows this the way he knows the Eastern Sensor Net gap was not accidental. The way he knows every choice in this vault has been made with complete awareness. A small object placed at the center of the worn circle with the precision of someone who considered very carefully whether to leave anything at all, and decided on this. It is a piece of basalt. From the wall, she has scratched something into its surface. Not words, not a message, just a mark, a single horizontal line, thin as she could make it. Day 1. He looks at it for a long time. Lieutenant Cavill is on duty when Vader enters the command level. Cavill has developed, over years of service on this fortress, an exceptionally fine-tuned sensitivity to the quality of Vader's silences. He has categorized them the way a naturalist categorizes weather patterns, not because he finds them interesting, but because accurate prediction is survival. He has not seen this particular silence before. "My lord," he says, carefully. The Eastern Sensor Diagnostic has flagged. The console to Cavill's left tears free of its mounting and hits the far wall. Cavill does not move. He has learned that movement during these moments draws attention in ways that stillness does not. The console's mounting brackets follow it, then the secondary display panel, then, with a precision that suggests deliberate selection rather than indiscriminate rage, the duty officer's personal data pad, which Cavill had been using to draft a supply requisition, and which he will not mention again. Vader stands in the center of the command level. His hands are at his sides. The destruction is contained, targeted at objects, not personnel, which Cavill has learned to read as the controlled version of something that has a much less controlled version available. "Increase the patrol radius on all exterior approaches," Vader says. His voice is entirely level. "Double the sensor sweep frequency on the Lothal corridor." "Yes, my lord." "And locate Commander Vanto. I want the Lothal relay station's departure logs for the last 12 hours on my console, within the hour." "Immediately, my lord." Vader turns and walks back toward the private corridors. Cavill waits until the door seals completely before exhaling. He finds the second thing she left 3 hours later. Not in the vault, in the training room, on the floor near the wall where they used to sit after sessions, in the gap between 2 floor stones that is slightly wider than the others. He finds it because he comes to the training room without a clear reason for coming, And once he is there, he finds himself moving along the wall to the specific spot and looking down. A playing card. Sabak. The Idiot. One of the chance cards, traditionally a wild in certain variants of the game. Old, worn at the edges, the kind of wear that comes from being handled and reshuffled over years rather than decades. She has carried it since before the vault. He doesn't know where she got it. He has never seen it before. He picks it up. He stands in the empty training room for a long time, holding a sabak card, and does not order a ship prepared, does not dispatch the Inquisitors, does not initiate the pursuit that every logical, tactical, imperial structured part of his thinking is suggesting. He closes his fingers around the card. She said she wouldn't leave him. This is what she said, in a voice that didn't waver, and he has held it for years, the way the vault walls hold dead kyber, not because it generates warmth, but because even inert things can function as structure. She left. And yet, he thinks of the basalt chip. Day 1. He thinks of a sabak game over Felucia, where a 14-year-old knocked his hand onto the floor and looked at him with complete, unintimidated directness and didn't apologize for it. He thinks she said she wouldn't leave him. He thinks she didn't say she'd stay. He doesn't move from the spot for a long time. The training room is very quiet around him. The floor where the two lights used to meet, red and white, separate not quite touching, is uniform gray now. Just stone, just floor, just the particular emptiness of a space that has been used for something important and is now waiting to be used again. He puts the sabak card in the inner pocket of his cloak, against the chest plate, where the life support systems run closest to what remains of the surface underneath. He doesn't hunt her. He waits. Cold durasteel and ozone. The throne room's air carries the particular charge of sustained force lightning. Acrid, metallic, the smell of electricity that has been finding flesh rather than ground. The viewport behind the Emperor's throne shows the battle above Endor, in real time. Fleet movements, turbolaser exchanges, the specific choreography of a war that was designed to end here. Luke Skywalker is on his knees. Vader stands 6 meters to the left of the throne and watches his son's body arc under another sustained discharge and does not move. This is the third time in 4 minutes. The Emperor is not trying to kill Luke quickly. He is trying to kill him in a way that teaches Vader something. The way a demonstration teaches, the way a lesson administered to someone you love, teaches better than any lesson administered to yourself. Palpatine understands leverage. He has always understood it. Tell me what you are waiting for, Vader thinks. Not at his son, not at the Emperor, at no one, at the part of himself that is still running calculations while Luke's hands scorch against the floor. Tell me what condition needs to be met. Tell me what the threshold is. He already knows. There is no threshold. He has known since the shuttle. Since Endor's moon resolved in the viewport, and Luke walked off the ramp with his hands bound and his chin level, looking at Vader with eyes that carried something Vader had not expected. Recognition, not of the mask, of what was behind it. The Emperor discharges again. Luke's voice finds the room and fills it, and Vader's suit registers the sound as pressure across every external sensor, simultaneously. Father, the word Luke said on the shuttle. Not Lord Vader, not the title, not the rank, not the armor. The word underneath all of those. Vader thinks of Ahsoka. He does not mean to. The thought arrives without permission, the way her footstep used to arrive in the corridor before her voice did, preceding the thing it belonged to, announcing it. He thinks of the training vault and the white blade, and the specific quality of her silence on the nights when she had decided something and hadn't told him yet. He thinks of "You cannot survive without me," and the way she sat with the dead Inquisitor's crystal for 261 days rather than let it stay broken. He thinks of the empty vault, the basalt chip. Day 1. He thinks of a sabak game over Felucia where a 14-year-old knocked his hand onto the floor and looked at him without apology. He thinks she said she wouldn't leave me. He thinks she didn't say she'd stay. The Emperor rises from the throne. And now, Palpatine says, you will watch the rebellion end, and your son will die knowing he failed. He gestures, almost casual, toward the viewport as all things that defy the natural order eventually fail. Luke raises his head. His face is burned. His hands are burned. He is looking at Vader with the expression of someone who has run out of options and has decided that running out of options is not the same as running out. I know there is good in you, Luke says. His voice is wrecked, but the sentence is clear. He hasn't driven it out of you. Vader looks at his son. He thinks, 19 years on a desert planet, hidden in plain sight, unaware, and then aware, and still here, still looking at him with Padme's eyes and his own jaw. And the specific quality of a person who has decided that the truth of a thing matters more than the safety of not saying it. He thinks, she asked me if I could protect someone without owning them. He did not have an answer then. He stood at the viewport and listened to the lava and said nothing, because the honest answer was no and he was not ready to say it. He is looking at the cost of no. Palpatine's hand comes up. The lightning builds in the space between his fingers. Not a discharge, a sustained accumulation, the kind that precedes something final rather than something instructive. He is done teaching. He has read Vader's stillness correctly, as he always reads everything correctly, and he has concluded that the lesson has not worked, and so the demonstration will have to end differently. Such a disappointment, he says, not to Luke. To Vader. Vader takes one step forward. Palpatine turns his head. "My lord," Vader says. The vocoder is level. The word lord costs him something he can feel in the chassis. A specific internal resistance, the way the suit's systems push back against commands that conflict with each other. "Kneel," Palpatine says. Simple. Old habit. Vader does not kneel. The doors blow open. They are the main doors. The throne room's primary entrance, durasteel, 2 meters thick, magnetically sealed and guarded from the outside by 6 Imperial Royal Guards, whose specific incapacitation Vader does not yet understand. The doors don't open. They come apart. Hinges failing. The magnetic seal overloaded from the outside, the two halves separating and swinging wide, and letting in the corridor's cooler air, in a single sudden intake. The figure in the doorway is backlit by corridor lighting. Twin white blades ignite simultaneously. The sound of them is the sound Vader has carried in his auditory memory for 4 years. Steadier than a Jedi blade, quieter than a Sith blade. The sound of something that knows exactly what it is. Ahsoka Tano walks into the throne room of the second Death Star, like she has been planning this particular walk for 19 years. She has. Palpatine does not move for 2 full seconds. In 2 decades of serving at his side, Vader has seen the Emperor surprised twice. The first time was a piece of intelligence about rebel fleet movements that contradicted 3 separate projections. The second time is now. The old face does something it almost never does. It recalculates. Visibly, the yellow eyes move from the white blades to the Montrails, to the Leku to the face, assembling a confirmation that the Force has already given him and that his intelligence apparatus has catastrophically failed to provide. "Tano," he says. The name lands differently from the Emperor's mouth than it ever has from anyone else's. Colder. Something in it that is very close to the specific coldness of a miscalculation being acknowledged. "Emperor," Ahsoka says. She has stopped 4 meters inside the doors, white blades at her sides, weight forward, grounded. She does not look at Vader. Not yet. "You have been alive," Palpatine says, "for 19 years. Under my nose." "A little below your nose, actually," she says. 40 meters below, give or take. Palpatine turns to Vader. The yellow eyes carry something that is not quite anger. Anger implies surprise as a component, and the Emperor does not permit himself surprise for long. This is colder than anger. This is the look of someone updating a threat assessment in real time. "Clever," he says to Vader. "This changes nothing." "It changes one thing," Ahsoka says. He looks at her. She looks at Vader. For the first time since the doors opened, directly, fully, without the combat peripheral awareness she has been maintaining on Palpatine, she looks at the mask and through it, the way she learned to look through it in the vault, the way that took years to learn and has never stopped being something she does deliberately. "I told you I wouldn't leave you," she says. The throne room holds the sentence. Luke, on the floor, has gone still. His burned hands are flat against the durasteel. He is watching the figure in the doorway with an expression that Vader recognizes. Recognition without context. The Force telling him something his conscious mind doesn't have the information to confirm. The same expression he wore on the shuttle ramp. The same instinct that found the helmet's catches before his hands knew where to look. "I told you I wouldn't leave you." Ahsoka says again, quieter, the repetition not emphasis but precision. She is making sure the sentence lands where she is aiming it. "Now prove you are him." Vader looks at his son, Luke's face, Padme's face, her eyes specifically, the shape of them, the particular quality of the attention in them. The way she used to look at him across Senate chambers when he was too far away to speak to, but close enough that the look carried everything the distance prevented. He looks at Ahsoka, the white blades, the vault, the sabacc card he has carried in his chestplate for 4 years, against the life support systems, in the location on his body where warmth is most mechanically approximated. He looks at Palpatine, his master, 23 years, the hand that built the suit, the voice that named him, the architect of every single thing he has lost, arranged so carefully that the losses looked like inevitability rather than design. The man who told him Padme died before the children were born. The man who has known for 19 years that 2 of those children were alive and growing and becoming themselves in the galaxy, and said nothing, and waited, and called it patience. The hesitation is real. He does not perform it, and he does not rush past it. He stays inside it for the full length of its reality, because Ahsoka is watching and she will know if he doesn't. And because the choice has to be made from the right place or it isn't the right choice. He has been waiting for her to prove she meant what she said. She is standing in the doorway of the Emperor's throne room with twin white blades and no backup and 4 years of freedom she chose to end because she decided this moment required her to end it. She proved it. He moves. Not toward Palpatine. Not yet. He moves to Luke first, 2 strides, and he puts himself between his son and the throne. And he looks down at the burned hands, and the eyes that carry Padme in them, and he says nothing because there is nothing adequate to say, and adequacy is not what this moment requires. What this moment requires is his body between his son and the lightning. He turns to face the throne. Ahsoka is already moving. The white blades come up. Across the room, Palpatine's hands begin to gather light. The fight begins. Lightning white afterimages burning onto the eye long after the discharge ends. The throne room's air is pure ozone now, breathable but barely, every surface carrying the static charge of sustained force power being spent without restraint. The viewport behind the throne shows the battle above Endor continuing in its vast, indifferent choreography, ships dying at distances too great to feel, while in this room everything is very close and very immediate and very loud. Palpatine does not fight the way Vader fights. Vader fights with his body, weight, momentum, the suit's mechanical amplification of what remains of Anakin Skywalker's physical instrument. He is a wall. He is pressure. He fights the way geology fights, with mass and inevitability. Palpatine fights with the room. The throne rotates on its housing and becomes a projectile. The viewport's reinforcing struts tear free and angle toward Ahsoka in 3 simultaneous lines. The durasteel floor panels at her feet buckle upward, breaking her footing precisely when her weight is committed to a forward strike. He has done this before, has fought multiple opponents before, has studied the geometry of divided attention for decades, and he is better at it than 2 people can easily account for. Ahsoka accounts for it. She reads the panel buckle through her feet before it completes, shifts her weight left, and redirects her strike into the struts instead, cutting 2 of 3 and letting the third pass wide. She moves constantly, not retreating, moving, keeping herself in Palpatine's peripheral threat zone, so that neutralizing her requires him to turn away from Vader. She is not trying to land a killing blow. She is trying to be expensive. Every second he spends managing her position is a second Vader has. Vader uses them. He drives through the throne's rotation with his shoulder, takes the impact across the suit's left pauldron, and lets it spin him rather than stopping it, and comes out of the spin with his blade already committed to a downward line toward Palpatine's right side. Palpatine steps clear, elegant, minimal, the economy of someone who has been doing this for decades longer than either of them, and the blade scores the floor instead. Lightning. Both hands. It finds Vader's chest plate and finds Ahsoka's left shoulder simultaneously, and the room goes white. Vader's suit absorbs what it can, the rest moves through the chassis and into what is underneath. And what is underneath has limits that 23 years inside this machine have made very specific and very well mapped. He knows exactly what the lightning costs. He has known since the first time Palpatine used it on him in the early years of the Empire, when the relationship between master and instrument was still being calibrated, and the calibration occasionally required demonstrations. He stays standing. Ahsoka does not. The discharge catches her left side fully. She had turned into a defensive position, both blades angled to redirect, and the redirection works for the first 2 seconds, and then the sustained pressure overwhelms it, and she goes down hard. Left knee hitting the dura steel, then her left hand, the white blade on that side flickering. She does not let it go out. Her right blade stays active. She is on one knee with her left arm failing, and her right blade up, and she is still in the fight, still in Palpatine's threat calculus, still expensive. But she is down, and Palpatine can see the math as clearly as Vader can, and the math says finish her first, and then finish the son while the father watches. Palpatine turns toward her. Lightning builds. Sustained. Final. Vader moves without calculating it. This is the detail he will not remember clearly afterward. Not because the memory fails, but because there is no gap between decision and motion, no architecture of strategy underneath it. There is Ahsoka on one knee with her blade still up, and there is Padmé's face in Luke's eyes, and there is a basalt chip on a vault floor that says Day 1 in handwriting he would know anywhere, and there is a sabacc card against his chest plate, and there is a 14-year-old in a holding pattern over Felucia who knocked his hand onto the floor and looked at him without apology, and there is a voice saying, "I told you I wouldn't leave you from a doorway with the light behind it." And then he is behind Palpatine, both arms, under the shoulders, the grip that the suit was never designed for, that requires overriding 3 separate mechanical limiters that exist to prevent the chassis from turning against its own structural tolerances, and the override costs something he can feel in every remaining nerve ending simultaneously, a full body report, immediate and comprehensive, and ignored. Palpatine's lightning turns inward as he loses his footing. It finds Vader instead of Ahsoka. It finds the suit's power cells and the suit's life support junctions, and the specific points along the chassis that 23 years of Palpatine's intimate knowledge of this machine have taught him are the ones that matter. Palpatine knows exactly what this costs. He is doing it deliberately, even now, making the act of stopping him as expensive as possible, teaching to the last. Vader walks him to the shaft. It is not graceful. It is not the choreography of the training vault or the clean geometry of a duel. It is a man carrying something he has needed to put down for 23 years, across 12 meters of damaged durasteel floor, with every system in his body filing simultaneous objections that he is not processing. He throws Palpatine into the dark. The sound the shaft makes is very long. Then it stops. The throne room is quiet for the first time. Vader's legs make a decision independent of his intentions, and he goes down, controlled, one knee, then both. Then his hands on the floor, the suit's emergency systems producing a sound he has heard only twice before, and has been aware, both times, meant something irreversible was in progress. Ahsoka is beside him. He doesn't see her cross the room. She is simply there, the way she was simply there on the other side of the vault door on the nights he didn't leave, present without announcement, without making the presence into something that required acknowledgement. Her left arm is held close to her body. Her right blade is deactivated. "Luke," Vader says. "I'm here," his son's voice from close. From the floor nearby, then closer. Then Luke is kneeling on his other side, and his burned hands are careful on the suit's arm, and his face is Padmé's face, and his eyes are his own, and Vader looks at them for a long time. "The mask," Vader says. Luke looks at Ahsoka. A question without words. "Help him," she says. Luke's hands find the helmet's release catches. He has never done this before. The mechanism is not standard, was never designed for removal by another person, requires a specific sequence that Luke shouldn't know. He finds it anyway. The Force guiding his hands through something that matters more than the mechanism. The helmet comes free. Cold air, real air, unfiltered, unrecycled, carrying the throne room's ozone and the faint electrical residue of everything that just happened. His lungs take it and report that it is inadequate. The suit's respiratory support is failing. The timeline on that is not long. He has enough air and what remains of his body's capacity to do what he needs to do. He looks at his son. Luke's face is open in a way Vader has no frame for. No mask, no strategy, no political calculation. Just a young man looking at his father's real face for the first and only time, with an expression that doesn't try to resolve the contradiction between what the face is and what it belongs to. He holds both things at once. Padmé could do that. It is the most Padmé thing about him. "You were right," Vader says. His voice without the vocoder is what it is. Damaged, diminished, the voice of someone who has been breathing filtered air for 23 years and before that breathed fire. There was still. I know, Luke says. I know. He looks at Ahsoka. She is sitting on the floor to his right, her left arm still held close, watching him with the expression she used to have in the vault when she had decided something and was waiting to see if he had caught up. Patient, clear, fully present. You came back, he says. I said I wouldn't leave you. Her voice is steady. I left. That's different. He wants to tell her something. There is something he wants to tell her that the machinery of 23 years has not allowed, and that the air in his lungs is not going to allow much longer. He looks at her face, older than the vault, older than the Ashfall Basin, older than the 14-year-old who trained in a temple that is ash now, and finds that the thing he wants to say doesn't require words. She knows. She has always known. That was the point of her. That was the point of all of it. His hand, on the floor, opens. She puts hers in it. The white blades are planted in the floor to his right, both of them hilts down, active. Ahsoka set them there while Luke worked the helmet's release, not thinking about it, just needing her hands free and needing the light to stay. The reactor glow through the shaft is failing. Whatever Palpatine's fall triggered in the Death Star's systems is progressing in the dark below them, and the throne room's own lighting has gone to emergency amber. The white blades are the brightest thing in the room. They cast their light across the floor in two overlapping circles that meet in the middle, no gap between them, finally just the steady white of something that was broken and chose not to stay that way. Luke says his name. Anakin. The real one. Ahsoka holds his hand while he follows the light. Let us know what you'd like to see next. The end,